Okay, guys, as we have completed the story from here, just have a look here for a while. After pausing it, then I will proceed it further. Okay, let us start the next paragraph. He paused as a rapt expression widened out from his daughter's nostrils, forcing her eyebrows up and her lower lip down in wide, noiseless grin. An expression in which Jack was startled to recognize his wife, feigning pleasure at cocktail parties. And all of a sudden, he whispered, the whole inside of the wizard's house was full of the smell of roses, roses. Roger Fish cried, and the wizard said, very cranky. That will be 7 pennies. So when he recites the magic spell that was abracadabra hocus for Joe, Jack notices that her expression of delight reminds him surprisingly of his wife's expression. She is pretending to be enjoying herself at a cocktail party. So Jack is particularly angered by Joe's lack of interest because it reminds him of the ways Claire also undermines and dismisses him. Indeed, as Joe grows up to behave and look more like Claire, and hence Jack is unable to separate them in his mind, viewing them both as women who seek to undermine him. And he suddenly came out of his thought and whispered by uttering that the whole house was full of the sweet fragrance of sweet roses. Jack further explains that the wizard asked Roger for 7 pennies as payment for the change of his body's smell. However, Jack misspeaks and says Roger Fish instead of Roger Skunk. Daddy, what? Roger Skunk? You said Roger Fish. Yes, Skunk. You said Roger Fish. Wasn't that silly? Very silly of your stupid old daddy. Where was he? Well, you know about the pennies. Say it. Here Joe is upset by the mistake his daddy did, and even as he does not seem to be particularly engaged in the story, Jack accepts his mistake in a very jolly mood and asks her daughter where he was. He also asks if she knows about pennies, but Joe didn't take any interest and replied his father to continue the story instead of asking silly questions. Okay, Roger Skunk said, but all I have is 4 pennies. And he began to cry. Joe made the crying face again, but this time without a trace of sincerity. This annoyed Jack. Downstairs, some more furniture rumbled. Claire shouldn't move heavy things. She was 6 months pregnant. It would be their third. Here, Jack continues the story and said that Roger Skunk had only 4 pennies at the time, and so unable to give 7 pennies to the wizard, he began to cry. This time, Joe's lack of sincere engagement with the story annoys Jack, since he is telling the story for his daughter's benefit. And downstairs, he hears Claire moving more furniture. He notes that she should not be moving heavy things, as she is 6 months pregnant with their third child. Here we come to know that for Jack, the sound is not only the reminder of worse course to come, but also of the pressure of an expanding family that he already feels constrained by. So the wizard said, oh, very well, go to the end of the lane and turn round 3 times and look down the magic well, and there you will find 3 pennies. Hurry up! So Roger Skunk went to the end of the lane and turned around 3 times, and there in the magic well were 3 pennies. Jack continues the story and recited that the wizard suggested Roger to go to the end of the lane and turn around 3 times and look down the magic well, and he would get 3 pennies there. Then Roger Skunk went there and did the same as suggested by the wizard. So he took them back to the wizard and was very happy and ran out in the woods, and all other little animals gathered around him because he smelled so good. And they played tag, baseball, football, basketball, lacrosse, hockey, so and pick up sticks. He then gave the pennies to the wizard and ran back to the woods where everybody gathered round him because he smelled so good. Then they all played a lot of games like tag, baseball, football, basketball, lacrosse, hockey, so and pick up sticks and enjoys a lot. What's a pick up sticks? It's a game you play with the sticks, like the wizard's magic wand, kind of. And they played games and laughed all afternoon. And then it began to get dark, and they all ran home to their mommies. Here Joe raises a question that what's a pick up stick? Jack explains that it is a game which is played with sticks. Then Joe tells him that it is just like Wizard's magic wand. Now Jack further told her that when all enjoyed a lot and when it was getting dark, then all the animals ran back to their mommies. Joe was starting to fuss with her hands and look out of the window at the crack of the day showed on the shade. She thought the story was all over. Jack didn't like women when they took anything for granted. He liked them apprehensive, hanging on his words. Now, Joe, are you listening? Now, at this point, Jack notices that Joe is no longer listening to him, fidgeting and looking out of the window as if the story was all over. Jack explains that this made him angry because he doesn't like when women take things for granted, preferring to keep the apprehensive and desperate to hear what he has to say next. Means that Jack didn't like such a woman who liked to get things that was certain to grant, but he liked those women who remained engrossed. Means that a sincere pay of attention in his talks. So he asked Joe, getting irritated that if she was listening or not. Yes, because this is a very interesting. Roger Skunk's mommy said, "What's the awful smell?" "What?" And Roger Skunk said, "It's me, mommy. I smell like roses." And she said, "Who made you smell like that?" And he said, "The wizard." And she said, "Well, of all the knob, you come with me and we are going right back to that very awful wizard." So, in an effort to regain Joe's attention, Jack throws a wrench in his classic story that when Roger gets home back to his mother, she is repulsed by his scent and demands that they should go back to the wizard and get changed back his original smell. Joe sat up, her hands dabbling in the air, genuine fright. "But daddy," then he said about the other little animals run away. Her hands scuttled off into the underbrush. Now Joe is horrified with the twist since Roger's holy smell made the other animals run away. "Alright," she said. "But mommy, all the other little animals run away." And she said, "I don't care. You smell the way a little skunk should have, and I'm going to take you right back to the wizard." And she took an umbrella and went back with Roger's skunk and hit that wizard right over the head. Here, Roger contradicted his mommy and told that with the old smell, all the other little animals run away from him. So he didn't like the idea of getting back his old smell. At this, his mommy replied that she didn't care about. He must smell as the way a baby skunk should smell. His mommy took out the umbrella and they went to the wizard's house. And when the wizard opened the door, the mommy skunk hit on his head. Students, here we come to know that Jack changes his classic story form in an effort to teach to lesson about duty and responsibility instead of being free from the smell. Jack told that Roger didn't go against her mother, but at the same time he is not enjoying his life really. Roger just accepted his mother's order to be a good son, to be a loyal son and responsible towards familial duty. Jack feels much in the same way Roger Skunk feels that his family life is constraining his freedom. Constraining means snatching or obstruction in the way. "No," Joe said and put her hand out to touch his lips. Yet even in her agitation didn't quite dare to stop the source of truth. Inspiration came to her. Then the wizard hit her on the head and didn't change that little skunk back. So, Jo was so young that she couldn't accept the concept of the story. She thought Roger Skunk's mother as a villain and she demands that the wizard must refuse to change Roger back and instead he should hit his mother on the head himself. "No," he said. The wizard said okay, and Roger Skunk did not smell of roses anymore. He smelled very bad again. But the other little Her father told her that nothing of that sort happened and the wizard changed Roger's skunk back to normal and he didn't smell of roses anymore. And then another question was just about to pop up in Little Joe's mind, but Jack stopped her. Now let us see what happened the next. Johnny, it's daddy's story. Shall daddy not tell you any more stories? Her broad face looked at him through shifted light, astounded. This is what happened. Then Roger, skunk and his mommy went home and they heard whoo whoo and it was the choo choo train bringing daddy skunk home from Boston. So he then told her that it was his story and if she wanted him to tell her any more stories, then she must keep quiet too. Kept on looking at her father with great surprise as she waited for the story to be continued. Here we came to know that how Joe was trying to control his father, which irritates him a lot. Okay, let us move on. So after some time, when Roger skunk and his mom were going back home, they heard a ooh ooh sound as his father arrived back from Boston. And they had lima beans, celery, liver, mashed potatoes, and pie of my for dessert. And when Roger's skunk was in bed, Mommy skunk came up and hugged him and said he smelled like a little baby skunk again, and she loved him very much. And that's the end of the story. Then all of them had lima beans, celery, liver, and mashed potatoes for dinner, and pie of my for dessert. Later that night, when Roger skunk was sleeping, Mom skunk came back. She hugged him and told him that he smelled again like a baby skunk and that she loved him a lot. With that, Jack ended the story. Students, here we get a moral issue of the lesson. If the parents should always decide what the children should do or let the children do what they like to do. As children dream and live in their own magical world, they are devoid of despise, ugliness, and petty differences. But Daddy, what? Then did the other little animals run away? No, because eventually they got used to where he was and didn't mind it at all. What's even Siladi? In a little while, that was a stupid mommy. So here Joe again asks that, did the other animals run away from Roger's skunk again? And Jack replied, no, because they slowly got accustomed to the smell, so they didn't feel like running away anymore. Here Jack tries to teach her a lesson that we are recognized by our own hallmark, so we shouldn't leave them from us. Now, when Jack said that, eventually everybody started liking Roger's skunk. Joe didn't understand the word eventually, as she had heard it for the first time. So she asked, what's even Siladi? To which Jack told her the meaning. But Joe thought that what the mother skunk did was not right, so she said she was a stupid mommy. It was not, he said with rare emphasis, and believed from her expression that she realized he was defending his own mother to her, or something as odd. Now I want you to put your big happy head in the pillow and have a good long nap. But Jack took it personally and said no, because somewhere he was relating it to himself and defending his own mother. Then Jack told Joe that he wanted her to take a long day nap. He adjusted the shade so not even a crack of this sword and tiptoed to the door in the pretense that she was already asleep. But when he turned, she was crouching on the top of the covers and staring at him. He hid under the covers and fell fast asleep. Bob is asleep. He then adjusted the shade so that no light came in. He then went very softly to the door, acted as if Joe had slept. But when he had turned and looked, she was staring at him and sitting on top of the covers. Then he told her, go to sleep, as she was also disturbing her brother, who was sleeping. She stood up and bounced gingerly on the springs. Daddy, what? Tomorrow I want you to tell me the story that the wizard took that magic wand and hit that mommy. Her plump arms shot forcefully right over the head. No, that's not a story. The point is that the little skunk loved his mommy more than he loved all the other little animals, and she knew what was right. Then she stood up and started bouncing softly on the spring while jumping on the spring on the bed. She asked her father to tell her story the next day that the wizard took a magic stick and hit the mommy and chopped her plump arms. Then Jack explains to her that this was not what was the story said. He told that the story gave us a message that the skunk loved his mother more than any of the other animals in the woods, and that his mother knew what was right for him and what was not. No, tomorrow you say he hit that mommy. Do it! She kicked her legs up and sat down on the bed with a great heave and complained of springs, as she had done hundreds of times before. Except that this time she didn't laugh. Said, Daddy, well, we will see. Now at least have a rest. Stay on the bed, you are a good girl. Then as he was explaining Joe about the story, he started insisting that the next day she would have to tell her a story like the one she wanted. Then she started throwing tantrums as she had done many times earlier, but this time she was not laughing or joking. Then Jack told her to be patient and sleep, and that he would see to it the next day because she was a good girl. Then he asked her to stay on the bed and close the door. So here, Joe's ultimatum about Roger's story signals to Jack that he is no longer able to control his daughter's opinions, and that she will soon begin contradicting him just like Claire does. He closed the door and went downstairs. Claire had spread the newspapers and opened the paint can, and wearing an old shirt of his own top of a maternity smock, was stroking the chair rail with a deep brush. Above him footsteps vibrated and he called, Johnny, shall I come up there and spank you? The footsteps hesitated. So he then went downstairs and saw his wife painting the walls. She had opened the paint can, spread the newspapers, and was wearing an old shirt of his over her maternity dress. She was painting the chair rail. Suddenly, he again heard footsteps above and shouted that did Johnny wanted a beating. Then the sound of footsteps started vanishing. That was a long story, Claire said. The poor kid answered, and with utter weariness watched his wife labor. The woodwork, a cage of moldings and rails and baseboards all around them, was half old tan and half new ivory, and he felt caught in an ugly middle position. And though he as well felt his wife's presence in the cage with him, he didn't want to speak with her, work with her, touch her, anything. So when Claire notices Jack, she says that he told a particularly long story. Jack responds, the poor kid. Jack is too drained, means too tired from telling Roger's stories to help paint, and instead he sits down heavily and watches his wife at work. Then he started looking at the woodwork around him and started relating it to his own life. He was looking at it and thinking that although both of them, means Jack and Claire, were caught in the case-like situation in their marriage, there was no solution to it. Neither did he want to talk to her, nor speak, and nor to touch her.